members, and welcome to this South East Area Planning Committee meeting on Wednesday the 21st of July 2021. My name is Councillor Vanessa Bell and I'm the chairman of this meeting. Before we commence the business of the meeting, there are a few housekeeping issues to run through. Members and members of the public, the set-up for the meeting has been designed to mitigate for COVID. Therefore, can I ask all present to work to the protocols agreed at Council on 29th of April 2021 in the interest of member and officer safety. Turn on your microphone and speak clearly. Please reference a page or paragraph number when referring to the agenda papers. Keep your contributions clear and concise as possible and ensure your microphones remain off when not speaking. Finally, can I draw your attention to the notices on the agenda papers regarding the different levels within the chamber and advise that the fire exit is the door behind this top table here, and that is also the exit by which we leave after meeting. Members, I just have some feedback. At the last meeting, Councillor Hell asked a very valid question about Councillor Fluker having called in an application and yet not being here to speak to it. So I would take some information, some advice from Simon Quay, Monitoring Officer, on that. And he advises that if a similar situation were to happen again, which I don't think it will, I think Councillor Fluker is returning to the next meeting, I think in September, that Councillor Fluker or any other councillor could approach me as chairman and ask to speak on the application that they have called in. Obviously they wouldn't be able to vote, but they would be entitled to take a lobbying perspective and speak. And indeed, members, that is what I intend to do this evening, because I called in this application. So in order to avoid any possible concerns around predetermination, I won't be voting. I don't often anyway as chair, but I will be speaking on from a lobbying perspective. Thank you. Item 2, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, we've received apologies for absence from Councillors Boyce, Channer, Dewick and Steens. Thank you.
Thank you, Burnham. It's recommended that the minutes, item 3, it's recommended that the minutes of the meeting held on the 23rd of June 2021, found on pages 7 to 10, are approved as a true and accurate record. I so move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Howard. Does any member wish to raise any matter of accuracy on the minutes? No. Thank you. May we agree by assent, members?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. Item 4, declarations of interest. To disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests, other pecuniary interests, or non-pecuniary interests relating to items of business on the agenda, having regard to paragraphs 6 to 8 inclusive of the code of conduct for members. Members are reminded that they are also required to disclose any such interests as soon as they become aware, should the need arise throughout the meeting. Members, any Councillor Stand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just that I'm a member of Essex County Council and they're often consulted on anything to do with highways. And I've got no pecuniary interest or any interest tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Stand. Councillor Passenger.
I have a non-pecuniary interest in as much as I know one of the speakers, Mr. Lewis, and he was my architect.
Okay, thank you. I should perhaps say I also know Mr. Lewis and Miss Bailey, but they haven't done any architectural work or any work whatsoever for me. Councillor Stand.
Chair, I do know them, but I'm not very good with names. I recognise them, so now I will say I do know of them, but only because they're a local business, no other relations. Thank you.
I think, members, it's very difficult sometimes when we live in reasonable small towns. So I think it's quite unusual that we won't know people. So we understand. Thank you. That brings us on to item 5, the Old Clubhouse. So that is found on pages 11 to 22. Is no actually over there, and the rain's up there.
And then there's a food definition of fashion.
It was, yes, it has. So I will hand over to Louise, please. You will present the presentation.
Thank you, Chairman. As stated, please note the members' update, the public comments received in relation to the original plan submitted. Planning permission was granted earlier this year for a number of extensions at the site. This current application seeks to vary condition 2 of the previous permission, which states that the development must be carried out in accordance with the approved plans. This application now seeks permission to install metal railings on the top part of the seawall in between two buildings flanking a slipway, the Old Clubhouse and the Otter Hut. The iron fence would measure 1.1 metres above the existing seawall and would measure 2.2 metres in total at the point closest to the Old Clubhouse and 2.5 metres in height overall when measured next to the Otter Hut. The fencing would span the length of the wall, which is approximately 5.9 metres between these two buildings. A new wall tie gate is also proposed in front of the existing floodgate. No other amendments have been made to the original proposal. This is the location plan showing the site and an aerial view showing where the site is located along the seafront within the south-east side of Burnham. These are the previously approved floor plans showing no fencing or railings on top of the seawall in the area in red. And then the proposed floor plans just showing the location of where the fencing will be located. The previously approved elevations and no fencing or alterations to the seawall. And the proposed elevations showing where the railings would be located 1.1 metres high above the seawall. It should be noted that during the course of the application, amended plans have been received so that close board fencing, which formed part of the original submission, is no longer proposed above the existing seawall, and it's only metal railings. Some photographs showing the site and where the railings would be located outlined in red. The proposed railings would be of an acceptable quality and maintain the views of the estuary and would therefore preserve the character of the area. The application is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. So I believe we do have some public participation on this item. So is there any order that we want to?
Yes, this is the first.
Okay, so if I could call the objector first.
Do you want to just press this?
Yes, please.
Good evening, councillors. As adjacent neighbours, residents at Eastern Boathouse and owners of the award-winning Otter Hut, we accept the proposed railings are an improvement on the weatherboard barrier, but we still have some grave concerns on this application. We are very relieved to see the Conservation Officer has recommended large-scale drawings showing adequate gaps between the uprights and metalwork to be of an acceptable quality. However, our concerns are as follows. 1. Now that the proposed railings are to be attached flush to the front of the seawall with no helpful step up for all these intruders, there is no need for the barrier to be 8 foot high. Surely a sensible compromise would be a total guarding of about 6 foot. 2. Any future railing needs super careful design without compromising the Otter Hut building, avoiding abutment to the existing copper flashings and gutters on the Otter Hut. 3. The end railings returning onto the Otter Hut would cause serious problems for any future maintenance work. A neater solution might be to craft panels with central support. 4. We feel the proposed design is very unimaginative with 58 verticals along 5.5 metres with a hint to the waves. This is a conservation area with a view to the river which belongs to everybody that walks the quay. At the very least, It deserves the work of a creative artisan to hand-forge bespoke railings. 5. The metal should be stainless, forged or better still bronze, consideration to the salty air. 6, and really importantly, if permission is to be granted, we would be looking for assurance that nothing in the future can be attached to the railings to obscure the view from the quay. Thank you for your time, and I hope you can bear our serious comments in mind tonight. Thank you.
Absolutely perfect timing. Thank you very much. Thank you. So if I could call on the applicant's agent, please, who is on hand for 2 minutes. When you're ready.
It's all the time.
If you can switch your microphone on if you haven't already.
Good evening. Old Clubhouse is Harriet's and Jeremy's long-term home. They are both from a maritime lifestyle and are well aware of the history and culture of Burnham. Jeremy himself is a trustee of the Vanguard Restoration Foundation charity. This proposed railing is a small part of the refurbishment of the clubhouse. The project is to be of the highest quality and it's a golden opportunity to safeguard a special building in the long term. Part of this project is to bring the slipway back to working life. This will include replacing the old lifting equipment with new hydraulic pumps, new decking, new tracks and new trucks to safely store and launch their boat. The EA have supplied a public risk assessment for the slipway which is submitted with the application. The assessment confirms that the slipway has the highest underlying risk score. This is a liability that the applicant is not equipped for nor can insure against. The reason behind the new railing is to A. Stop the antisocial behaviour of trespassers on the slipway that is often observed by the applicant. B. Remove the risk of trespassers being seriously injured on the slipway. The initial platform houses the workings of an old electric pump and is situated higher than the brick pit where sheer drops to the steel tracks below. And C. The applicant is naturally eager to protect the powerful equipment. The initial application for a weatherboard fence drew a lot of criticism as it obstructed views through to the river. We of course sympathise with this and feel the main intention to cause any upset. Liaising with the planner and the EA, Anton Housen, we can see the proposal for a wrought iron railing. This retains the view of the river as well as providing protection from and for the restored slipway and associated machinery. Anton Housen has formally consulted and supports the design and its relationship with the conservation area. The EA also supports the proposal from whom we will obtain the correct building permits. The applicant works with the last master blacksmith in Essex, which will ensure that the railings will be created with the highest quality. Many thanks.
Thank you very much. Excellent timing again. Do any officers want to come in before I open the debate to members? No? Okay, members, over to you. Any comments? Councillor Brown.
Agree with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Messenger, then Councillor.
Could I just ask some questions in regard to the railings? Because I'm a little confused really. Question one is the slipway a private slipway? And the railings themselves, again, being 8 foot high, is that really, are they that big? Are they really 8 feet high?
That's the application.
Yeah.
It's a big total height.
So the reason they're that high is to stop people climbing over, or is it to stop vandalism? Why are they so high? We don't know.
That's a very good question. And
Okay.
I think,
So then can we
Professor
just
has
go back
noticed
onto
that,
it?
so-
So assuming that the railings are there, are they then open? Are they gated railings? Can you then have access to the slipway? You can. This is like 20 questions or something, isn't it? So what I'm trying to establish is why, I mean, the reason we're having railings, or the railings are there, is to protect the clubhouse,
the boat.
the boat. Okay, so 8 feet railings to protect a boat, is that? Okay, that's my question, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sloan.
Councillor Bassinger's asked a lot of what I was going to say. I don't have a problem with the railings because we all are unfortunate to know that we have been put up further down and it has totally ruined a lot of the view on our beautiful river, but that's a different issue. I do have an issue with the height I'd like to commend the applicants for actually working on changing the original design, but I actually take on board what the speaker actually said, the lady, and I think it is a conservation area, and I really feel that I admire what the owners are trying to do, and I think they need to protect if the boat or whatever, the Vanguard is moved there, or for whatever reasons they have their own
not the
reasons.
council stamps, it's their private.
Oh, they're private boat, I do apologise. I totally understand that, but I do have an issue with the height, and I don't know if there's anything we can do, because really I'm going to look to Mr. Lee, because I just think it's too high, but there again I don't know how I could put that in as a planning reason not to, Mr. Lee.
Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee responding to council stamps.
Okay. It's an interesting point, and it's a subjective matter. If members consider that the railings of this height detract from the character and appearance of the conservation area, then that's the negative that comes to that resolution, and you know, that thought process has sound planning merit. So you know, there is a subjective point. You know, cited in a conservation area, and members as decision makers need to consider whether or not the scheme does or does not deserve or enhance the special character and appearance of conservation area. And that's what we're here to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Councillor Janine, council stamp again.
Anyway, just going back to the height, if somebody had a garden fence and they wanted an 8-foot high fence, we would all be screaming saying that's far too high, surely. So I think that the height is a problem. I think the railings are probably valid as a security element, and also to stop people falling down the slipway. The other thing that really does concern me though is the fact that we're shutting, hopefully not, and we can stipulate this, that we are not in any way shutting off the view for people to see the river. So those railings certainly do need to have something, you need to put something in place to make sure that something isn't pinned to those railings to cause obstruction to people actually seeing the river, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ashton. Councillor Stamp.
Thank you. It is difficult, and I'm just wondering if the applicant would be able to go back and consider reducing them by a minimum of possibly 2 feet. I do share a concern about the height. Totally what I've said previously, Chairman, is that I understand, but it's just too high, and it is changing the whole of our conservation area. I noticed that Mr. Housen, our conservation officer, said it was acceptable, but I can't remember if he commented on the height, so forgive me, I don't know if you actually mentioned the height, if anybody can assist me on that. I think the design was something that I felt was acceptable. But I do have a problem with the height, Madam Chair. I'm sorry to go on about it, but I can't think of another way of saying that in planning terms.
I think you're absolutely right, Councillor Stamp. Thank you. And I think I said that as I called the application in, I'm going to be voting, but I'll speak and then I'll come to you, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Presuming this is above the seawall, you can still access the seawall. And if it's not high enough, people can climb over it. They're standing on top of the seawall.
No, Councillor.
Because there's someone bolted in front of the seawall.
Bleeping. Who's got the feedback for somebody? No, Councillor Hell. The design is such that the railings abut the seawall on the side, on the quay side, so therefore there would be no leverage for anybody to get a footing in order to climb up.
But they could get in from the seaside, couldn't they?
No, Councillor Hell,
Okay.
they couldn't.
Okay.
Unless they
Well,
were dolphin or sea.
The chairman knows best.
I'm very familiar with the area, very familiar indeed.
Just another thing, again, it was pointed out that the maintenance of the Otter's Hut would also be compromised if there was no access for the owners of the Otter's Hut to actually maintain their property. So is there some way that there could be some understanding or agreement or something where if there was maintenance that needed to be done, access would be possible? Otherwise, how would any repairs be done unless you had a boat? I suppose that's the only way.
Well, I mean, there will be access because obviously the owners will need to access the slipway to come backwards and forwards.
But if
The
it's-
concerns, as I understand, are about the methods of abutment and potential damage that might be caused.
But
The Otter Hut is an award-winning building. It has won awards for its architecture, and so it forms a part of the wider, very important conservation area, which is the area that we're talking about now.
sure.
And my feeling is that Burnham deserves better for a very important conservation area, a very important building. And, you know, I wish that the architect would go take it away and come out with something better, really. I think as Bailey summed it up brilliantly, the issues, council staff raised scale and bulk and design as concerns.
So really, Madam Chair, we're just looking really for a bit of common sense and compromise here. There is no major objection as such, it's just some tweaking. Is that what we are?
I believe so, Councillor Astor. Mr. Lee, I don't know if those are things that we can condition or if they're things that we would have to figure out here.
Through you, Chairman, the application is, well, it is to a certain extent, this is Section 73 application, potential development overall has been accepted, and this is really looking at an amendment for the grading. So any challenge to that through the conditions would be unreasonable for a better argument, because it's slightly perverse to actually be looking to change the fundamental aspect of what this application is for us. Once again, for example, I would say the application comes from the we should look to approve or refuse what it's for us. I think we need to be very careful about giving direction through the committee and what would be acceptable. And there's always going to be doing with as other applicants have experienced previously. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. So I have a proposal from Councillor L, which is to accept the officer's recommendation. Do I have a counter proposal at all? Anyone?
Was it seconded?
It wasn't seconded. Do I have a seconder for that? No, apparently. Do I have a counter proposal? Councillor Bassett.
Well, the council proposal would be that perhaps the applicant would have a think about reducing the height, maybe ensuring or giving some assurances that there would be no obscuring of the railings, and and allow, maybe should maintenance be needed to the Otter's Hut, access would be granted, something like that perhaps.
Thank you. So that would be a refusal.
Yeah.
That would be a refusal.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Staff.
Councillor,
Mr.
Mr. Lee.
You're making you a councillor again.
Mr.
Mr. Lee. That's not a wrong thing again.
Possibly couldn't comment, Chairman.
Mr. Lee.
Obviously, as always, I'd like to get practices to come from myself or whoever comments on the reason for moving forward. My concerns in relation, I think there's enough points that don't fall under the planning system, or if they do, they can be dealt with through conditioning. So there are two concerns in relation to the point about obscuring of views through. There are arrangements there, either that they will be reduced subject what they're proposing. Obviously, if members are saying that's acceptable, but worried about an increase, either you could put a condition on about ensuring views put through, but the other thing is that nearly anything that was done that would have a permanency would have to be developed into the commission anyway. So there can be a condition, no, not says this shouldn't be in the field or anything, not standing development, just standard text. So that would overcome any concern regarding that. So I wouldn't recommend that members look for reason for based on that. Two practices that the condition can overcome with you shouldn't reduce it on it. The other point in relation to the access to repair and maintenance, and that's a civil matter, no difference with any other extent, where two sides join each other. So it's not really something for planning to worry about. I understand that people have concerns and issues, but it's not really a matter for us. Obviously, if members consider that the height of the railings has a detrimental impact on the conservation area, special character and appearance, that's within their gift and that's subjective. And as I said earlier, that has some planning basis in the thought process where the other two sort of points in Councillor Bassett's views, I think one would be dealt with condition at best and the other one isn't within planning matters. So that'd be my advice, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. That's very helpful. So I think we have a proposal to refuse, and the grounds being,
Exactly what Mr. Lee said, I'm seconding it, but it is on the height. It's the height, and I can't remember exactly. It's not full because it's just the height in the conservation area.
Yes.
I mean, you made a very valid point, Chairman, in the fact that it is lovely down there, and we've got the Royal Corinthian, we've got some superb buildings down there, and it really needs to fit in with what we've got there. Sadly, we have railings further up that don't, and hopefully we can adjust that as a separate issue some other time. But I think it's really important for Burnham to make sure, and this district, that we look after our conservation areas. And as we've said, and it's down to the applicant and the architect, if they could consider coming back with lower ones. I don't think that most probably will be an issue. But I think everybody needs to understand that it is 8 foot is high. Thank you, Madam Chair.
thank you very much, Councillor Stamp. So I believe we have a seconded proposal to refuse. So the proposal was from Councillor Bassinger and seconded by Councillor Stamp. So members, we need to do a roll call vote. So I can't see anybody on the screen.
No, that's fine.
So all those in favour of the proposal to refuse? That's, yeah, Councillor Carter, Marie,
Yeah.
and all those against? Councillor, and I'm abstaining then. So the application is refused. Thank you. So that brings us on to item 6, any other items of business